Hi everyone, welcome back to another Authenticity life coaching video blog. I am super excited to be here with you again, sharing with you another video blog. In today's video blog, I'm going to be going through part 2 of the video blog series, Journey to Wholeness, integrating your higher self and your lower self. So in the previous video, I talked about the higher self and the lower self and the human journey to wholeness and how we struggle as human beings to integrate these two parts of ourselves into a state of wholeness and authenticity. So in this video, I'm going to be going through the practices that you can embody and integrate into your day-to-day life that will allow you to create this sense of integration in your life and integrate these parts into a whole. Because on a deep level, all human beings desire to be whole. The desire to be whole is such a strong inner yearning that we all have that sometimes we will go to the end of the earth to try and accomplish that. But it's not something that we will necessarily feel through doing things outwardly in the world. That sense of wholeness often comes from our relationship to ourself and our ability to integrate these two parts of ourself, our higher self and our lower self. And the better that we're able to embrace and love our lower self, the more we're going to be able to connect to our higher self. And so often what happens is that this internal split is created when we are disconnected from our higher self because we are stuck in our lower self and unable to transcend or integrate these parts of ourself that are classified as being the lower self. When we're unable to integrate these parts of ourselves, we become disintegrated, and that holds us back. It restricts us, it cuts us off from being authentic and from connecting to our higher self. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about some of the top practices that I like to use to integrate my own disowned parts into a state of wholeness. And also these are the practices that I give to my clients to use that have had great success with them. So I want you to benefit from that. So I'm going to turn this over and we're going to talk about the first practice. So the first practice that we're going to be talking about today is self-love. Now this is arguably one of the most powerful and significant practices for creating wholeness and integrating your higher self and your lower self. For me personally, on my own journey, this has made such a huge difference in my life. Not only in my relationship to myself, but my relationship to the people in my life, the relationship to the work that I do, and even just simply having the courage to step into my authentic self and to be who I truly am. That was a huge thing for me because for a big part of my life, I was terrified of my authentic self, and I tried very hard to be something else other than what I was. And that caused a lot of pain and suffering, and it actually triggered me to move into depression and anxiety. So when we bury our authentic self and we are disconnected inside and we're not integrated, we haven't integrated our higher self and our lower self, then we create a lot of internal suffering, a lot of internal pain, a lot of dysfunction in our relationships to people, our relationship to money, our relationship to everything in our life, because the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. What we do inside of ourselves is going to mirror what we do to others in our life and what we attract back to us in the form of energy that is equal to that energy that is going around inside of us. So self-love is really one of the most significant practices that you will engage in to create that sense of wholeness and to integrate your higher self and your lower self. Now the first element of self-love that I often like to talk about is shadow work, okay? Because our shadow is something that represents the parts of ourself that we don't love, the parts of ourselves that we believe are unworthy of love, the aspects of ourselves that we try very hard to hide from the world, that we hide behind masks, that we try to repress and bury, that we try to disown. These are the aspects of ourselves that we don't have a very good relationship with. And therefore, they are also the aspects of ourselves that cause us to get stuck in fear, guilt, and shame, and in our lower self. And they prevent us from connecting to our whole self and our higher self. So the more that we're able to unconceal the aspects of our shadow, the parts of ourselves that we don't love, the parts of ourselves that we believe are unworthy of love, the more we're able to transcend these aspects by loving them and integrating them and seeing that they serve us and that they're actually a very important part of who we are. And when we're able to do that, we reconnect to our whole self. We become whole again. And the more whole we are, the more we feel worthy, the more gratitude we feel, the more love for life we feel, and the less burdened by by fear, guilt, and shame we will be. And the more we're able to elevate our energy into a state of love and gratitude. So really, shadow work is about loving and integrating your shadow aspects. That's in essence what it's about. And so what are the parts of yourself that you feel are unworthy of love? And a lot of times these parts of ourselves that we don't feel are lovable, or we try very hard to hide or oppress or disown, often come from our childhood. When we were children, we may have had certain experiences that caused us to repress, disconnect, disown these parts of ourselves in an attempt to avoid criticism, judgment, withdrawal of love and affection. Maybe we tried to shape ourselves into being the perfect child that allowed us to create more connection with our parents. Maybe we tried to avoid pain and suffering and abuse or criticism or judgment or any of those things to try and stay safe. Because a lot of times when we're children, we rely on our parents to feel safe, to emotionally regulate, to provide sustenance. So when those things like our sense of safety, our sense of ability to survive and create sustenance, and when any of those things are threatened, we begin to shut down any behavior or any expression of ourselves that leads to that unsafety, that lack of safety, or that inability for us to survive. So if we feel that our survival is on the line when we express certain parts of ourselves, we will discontinue expressing that part of ourselves. We will learn to hide that part of ourselves. We will learn to bury that part of ourselves so that we can stay safe, so that we can be seen, so that we can maintain our parents' sense of love and connection to us, which is oftentimes very unhealthy, but it allows us to survive and get through it. But the problem is, as we become adults, we don't stop doing this. We move into our adult relationships, and instead of seeking an emotionally rewarding, loving relationship, because of these unloved parts of ourselves, we seek a relationship that is similar to what we experienced as children, a relationship that resonates with the parts of ourselves that we're still working on. And so often we will seek a relationship where we experience the same emotion and the same dynamic as we did with our primary caregivers, parents, and family. And so this is why unconcealing these parts of yourself, working on your shadow, is such a powerful self-love practice. Because when we can love these disowned parts of ourselves, we can move back into wholeness and we begin to reclaim our authentic self. And when we make that shift on the inside of ourselves, it transforms all of our relationships externally. Our relationships with our partners, with our family, with our work, with every single thing that we do. So I'm just going to turn this over. So the next self-love practice that's really significant is putting yourself first. Okay, so this is something you've probably heard, putting yourself first, and it's something that's quite common, but I'm going to say that it is super important when it comes to integrating your higher self and your lower self, because as long as we are in fear and guilt and shame, and we are not putting ourselves first, and let's say for example, we're people pleasing, and we choose to put other people's needs and values and the feelings first, and we put our own needs and values and feelings last, then we're going to start building an inner resentment, as well as a self-depreciation and a deeper sense of unworthiness. And with that, we're going to feel probably anxious. We're going to start feeling more fear and more and more disconnected to our whole self. And so putting yourself first is an act of self-love. If you can put yourself first and start putting your values, your needs, your feelings at the top of the list, you will feel a sense of rejuvenation. You will feel a sense of connection to yourself, because in that moment you are saying, who I am matters. Who I am is worthy of love. Who I am is worthy of expression. My needs and values matter. And when you start owning that and you have the courage to step into that, the world will start reflecting that back to you. And that is a very empowering thing to experience. And it is, like I said, an act of self-love. Now, as a part of putting your authentic needs and values first, a big part of that is that we need to start looking at what are the things that bring us joy? What do we love doing? What inspires us? And how can we make those things a priority in our life? How can we do the things that we love doing in our life? Because the more that we do that, the more that we nurture that sense of wholeness in ourselves, the more that we love ourselves by doing that, and the more we're going to have the capacity to love other people, because we feel like we're giving ourselves permission to do that. We unconsciously begin giving permission to other people in our life to express and do the same thing. And that is the greatest gift in any relationship, for you to be able to let that person, to appreciate, honor, and love that person for being who they are. And you cannot do that to somebody else unless you are doing it to yourself and giving yourself permission to put your authentic needs, values, and feelings first. So the next practice that I've written here, which is we've already kind of covered with the shadow work, but there's a few different elements that I want to talk about. So learning to love and embrace all aspects of yourself, both positive and negative. So when we talk about the shadow, which I've already discussed, that's learning to love and embrace the aspects of ourselves that we believe are unworthy of love, that we have a lot of shame and fear and guilt around. Now, it's equally important on the other side for us to learn to love and embrace our light, our gifts, our talents, our inner beauty, our magnificence, because oftentimes we have just as much trauma, just as much emotional pain attached to ourself inwardly in the sense of our gifts, our talents, and the things that we're really good at. A lot of times we can have a lot of shame around those aspects of ourselves, from expressing our power or stepping into our power and owning who we are. And say, for example, you're a child and you love to sing, and you would sing really loud, and it was amazing, and you could really sing well. But you sung one time around the wrong person, or around maybe one of your parents weren't very supportive, and you got into trouble for it. Maybe you got judged for it. Maybe they said something really demeaning and put you down, or maybe they just shut it down and threatened you for doing it because it made them uncomfortable. And you decided in that moment that I can't express that beautiful part of myself anymore. I have to stop. And you made a decision to shut that part of yourself down, to shut it down, to hide it away, so that you didn't experience that sense of being unloved, that sense of being criticized and judged, so you didn't experience that pain again. Because when we experience pain around any aspect of ourselves, and if that pain's significant enough, and there's a significant enough level of strong emotions and sensory stimulation in a negative fashion around that part of ourselves, we will commit that to our long-term memory. And it will become something that continues to get triggered every time we think about expressing that part of ourselves. And that becomes something that blocks our authentic self-expression, and it stops us from integrating our higher self and our lower self, and it stops us from being whole. So we have to start working on embracing the light aspects as well as the shadow aspects of our being. And our light aspects, like I said, represent the things that we're gifted at, the things that we love about ourselves, our talents, and all of those positive aspects of our character. So if I ask you to stand in front of the mirror and to say to yourself, I am magnificent, I am beautiful, I am lovable, I am gifted, I am talented, how uncomfortable would you feel doing that? Or how embodied would you feel doing it? Could you do it and feel completely embodied and actually feel it deep in your heart and own it 100%? Or does it make you feel really uncomfortable? Is it something you can't bring yourself to do? Do you feel dead inside when you say it? This is one of the things, one of the practices when it comes to integrating the light aspects of myself that I'll often engage in. And when I started this exercise of looking in the mirror and saying those things to myself, I didn't believe it. It made me feel really uncomfortable. It made me want to cringe. It really almost sent me into fear. But as I got better at owning who I was and loving these light aspects of myself and unconcealing and releasing all the pain around those aspects of myself, I was able to say it and feel it and own it in my body. And that is such a profound gift for me. And I want you to be able to experience that too. So working not only on your shadow, but on your light aspects, the aspects of yourself that are positive, that are your gifts, your talents, your unique things about you that allow you to express yourself in an authentic and in a beautiful way. They are the things that you have to also work on embracing, unconcealing and loving and reclaiming. So I'm going to turn it over. So one of the next practices, which again is a very important practice, self-love practice, is self-care. Self-care has many different levels to it. Obviously, there's emotional self-care, there's mental self-care, there's physical self-care, and there's spiritual self-care. So there's lots of different levels of self-care that we can engage in to help us become more whole. And one of the things that I see so commonly, not only in myself, but in lots of the people that I work with, is that so often when we are disconnected to ourselves, or we're unable to connect to our higher self, or we're stuck in our lower self, this usually means there is a lack of self-care. So when I come across people that are struggling to find this place of wholeness within themselves, so often what I see is that their self-care rituals are lacking. And self-care is such an important thing. We need to be able to give ourselves time to rejuvenate emotionally, mentally, and physically, spiritually, through different daily practices that allow us to do that. Through diet, through meditation, through rest and relaxation, just taking time out, spending time in nature, downtime, just rest and repair, all of those things that seem quite simple, but so often we forget to practice those things because we are so hardwired for stress, dysfunction, and we are just in such a pattern or a program of being in that tunnel vision and always trying to hustle, and we're trying to, hustle for our worthiness, or whatever you might want to call it, but we're not really giving ourselves time to, interrupt that pattern of fight or flight where we're stuck in stress, where we're trying to go, and we're on adrenaline. We have tunnel vision, all of those things. So self-care is about learning to create conscious daily rituals and practices that allow you to rejuvenate your body, disconnect from that fight or flight mechanism, and bring yourself into a state of deep relaxation of heartfelt openness, of presence, so that you can come from that place. And you have much more power to create, much more power to, a much greater capacity to powerfully influence your life when you're in a state of loving presence than when you're in a state of stress. Okay, so self-care is super important. So I want you to ask yourself, what are you doing on a daily basis as part of your self-care ritual? You know, what do? Do you go into nature? Do you meditate? Do you eat good food? Does your diet support energetically the things that you want to do in your life? Or does it, detract from that? What other unhealthy things in your life are you engaging in whether it's numbing, addictions, or other things that are causing you to not be able to function in life and causing you to not be able to actually find that restorative sense of connection to yourself that comes from proper self-care? Something to think about. So the next thing I've written here is boundary setting. Okay, so boundary setting is a really big part of self-care, because so often what we tend to do when we're in stress or when we're in people-pleasing mode and when we're on adrenaline is we tend to continue to put ourselves last. Okay, we tend to not be very good at saying no. We tend to not be very good at creating space for these practices to allow us to take care of ourselves. And all of these things lead to a lot of dysfunction, okay? And when we don't say no, we often repress anger, we hold on to resentment, and so many other emotions start to weigh us down and we get very heavy. And we have to remember here too, what I've written down the bottom here, is that when we are stuck in people pleasing, if we say yes to other people all the time, then we're actually saying no to ourselves. Okay, so when we put our values, our needs, and who we are last, and we say yes to other people, even though we feel like we should be saying no, and we're burnt out and we're just overwhelmed, we are saying no to ourselves. We are reinforcing that belief that who we are is unworthy of love, not good enough, and it just keeps reinforcing that pattern. So being able to say no and set boundaries is a super, super important practice for self-care and self-love. So the last practice that is a great self-love practice and that is also great for integrating your higher self and your lower self is meditation. And meditation is often used typically for stress reduction, it's used for healing, it's used for changing your brain waves and moving from the high stress brain waves of beta brain waves, which is stress, into alpha and theta, which is a state of deep relaxation, a state of openness, a state of presence. Meditation has many different benefits, and it's a great practice to embody to create wholeness, because just the mere act of sitting, with ourselves and being present and interrupting those stress patterns can be a very difficult thing for people to do at the best of times. So having a daily ritual where you sit down, you take the time and you create the space to really allow yourself to become fully present, to be in this present moment, to slow your brain waves down and move into a state of presence, into those alpha brain waves, theta brain waves, into that deeper state of relaxation, connection to yourself. It's very healing for the body, very healing for the mind, and it's a great way to get better at becoming more present in your day-to-day life. It doesn't matter how you meditate. There are lots of different ways of meditating. People meditate sitting in the morning. Some people meditate by going for walks, walking meditations. There's laying down meditations. There's different forms of Tai Chi and other movement-based meditations. There's so many different types of meditations that you can embody that will benefit you and help you integrate yourself, essentially your higher self and your lower self, into your whole self. And that's what we want here. We want integration. We want to create wholeness. We want to bring ourselves back into that state of presence, of gratitude, of really being present with the people in our lives and present with ourselves, so that we can have more loving, whole relationships. So meditation is a great practice. So I want you to think about, how can you start a daily practice of meditation? What form of meditation would you like to engage in your day-to-day to improve your sense of well-being and integrate your higher self and your lower self? What form of meditation is best suited to you? So thank you for watching this video. I hope that this gives you some really powerful practices that you can start embodying today. And I know that if you do, you will get results, and that will start creating a shift for you. So please like and share this video. Please start a discussion and comment in the comment section below. I would love to hear your point of view. I'd love to start more conversations and discussions around this. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.